Episode of the Future Tribe show. I'm Germaine.
And I'm Kelsey.
We've got a very interesting show for you today, as always. Starting off with Pepsi and Pepsi's latest missed attempt, I think, at marketing. We've got the MTV logo refresh, which I've I've sort of never seen them do that before, so that's an interesting one. Avast antivirus rebranding, and Mailchimp getting acquired by a company that, especially if in the US, you'd be very, very familiar with. And what other topics do we have today, Kelsey?
So we'll also be talking about a migration we've had from the Future Theory website, so a little announcement there to make. Talking about the maker of Monsterinsights acquiring another brand, Easy Digital Downloads, if anyone's heard of that. We'll be talking about LearnDash getting acquired as well, so a few acquisitions there. And finishing it off with a new podcast from the team behind Gravity Forms.
Yeah, so a lot of WordPress and acquisition sort of talk on this week's episode, but let's roll the intro and get started. All right. So the first one, Pepsi not hitting the mark with their target audience. What do you know about this one, Kelsey?
Yeah, so I came across this article the other day. Basically, Pepsi has done a slight rebrand. I think it's just temporary as a sort of marketing push at the moment. And they've got a new ad spot to go with it, which I believe is being shown through socials. It's not so much a TV ad. It might be in the US, but at least for us in Australia, I think it's more of a digital ad. So you can see on the screen there for the people that are watching the stream. We've got that rebrand. It's very retro, trying to go sort of that 70s, 80s kind of vibe, bringing in a bit of nostalgia, I guess, for a lot of the older generation maybe that would be familiar with that kind of design. The issue is that the sort of ad they've got, they've used Doja Cat and they've taken the song from Greece and sort of transformed it into this modern take on it, I guess. Which is not, I don't know, it's interesting. So you go through TikTok and you're talking about a song from 1978 and trying to match up Gen Z with a song from, what is that now, like 50, 40 years ago? That's, my maths is way off there. Just a long time ago.
About 40 years ago, yeah.
Yeah. So it's a bit of, I don't know, it seems to have fallen flat because so many of the seemingly target audience, which is that Gen Z audience, is just not familiar with that song. So all of a sudden you've just got this kind of weird mix of, I don't know, music, visuals, and just the wrong audience. Like it just doesn't match up in my eyes.
Yeah, it might be a case of needing a bit more refinement. Maybe someone came up with this concept and everyone thought, okay, this is the way to go. Let's do it. But quite, didn't execute on it. But this isn't the first time Pepsi's misstepped anyway, right? Like there was the whole Kylie Jenner controversy.
Yeah.
It's not a weird one for Pepsi. It makes you wonder if this is a strategy on Pepsi's part to intentionally misstep every single time because
It's
we're
definitely like their second tier cola brand that's really trying to compete with Coke and is just struggling because they just can't seem to find their own mark, I guess. I mean, I personally love the rebrand. I think it looks really awesome. It's kind of funky. The new flavors as well, I'm pretty sure.
Soda
Um,
shop. Well, it's called
yeah,
Pepsi Cola Soda Shop, and then cream soda cola and black cherry cola is in the screenshot here at least.
yeah, which I love. And they're I would say they're quite retro flavors as well. It's the kind of thing you'd imagine in like a diner in the 70s or 80s. So I can understand that angle. I just think that I don't know, maybe we're not understanding who they're trying to target, or they've just really missed their target audience and what they'll respond to. Because they've hit the mark with Doja Cat. She's huge on TikTok. That all makes sense, but just the song choice and the execution of the song and sort of not massacring a classic because they haven't massacred it, but it's also just not, it's not even an improvement or anything. It's just kind of
Just
average.
there. Yeah, it just sort of
Yeah.
exists. And you would imagine that there would have been a decent budget creating that sort of scenescape and creating the atmosphere around it. And I mean, I don't connect with Doja Cat. I think definitely more of a TikTok. If you ask me what one of her songs are, I think it's a she, right?
Yes.
Yeah. If you ask me one of their songs, I would not be able to tell you.
I think
I
you would
probably
have heard
know
them. She's
them.
got a few big ones, but she's definitely like
Probably.
a TikTok artist first.
Yeah.
Yeah, which is a weird genre of artist to be. The
Well,
new
yeah,
one.
it's a whole new world of music and how music sort of interacts with social media as well. So, classic Pepsi though, a bit of a misstep there. On to another classic brand, I would say, MTV, made popular by MTV Cribs, amongst a lot of other things that they're known for. They've done a bit of a refresh. Again, we're featuring brand new their website. So awesome site to check out as always. This refresh is very subtle and very much a refresh. Would you
Is
agree with
subtle the
that?
right word when you're talking about bright yellow, red, and blue?
Subtle in terms of the changes potentially, or
Mhm.
perhaps not so subtle in terms of the colors that they've chosen to use. Though interestingly,
Mm,
I think this is a logo that hasn't really changed over the years. They've refined it, if only just. Um,
They've sort of just
and
kept the same basis and adjusted to the current trends, essentially, with that, like, black and white. Previously, it was, I mean, those 80 colors of, like, orange, light blue, and red, and now they've gone very, like, bright, which is very much a trend at the moment I've been seeing. Just really bright and fun, I guess.
yeah, though the black and or the single color version from '09 to until recently, to the new shift has only just dropped that 3D effect. Again, I guess this makes a logo that is very easy to scale down. Obviously, social media is much bigger now than it was even in 2009. And in 2009, Facebook would have been a year old, I think, if I'm getting my dates correct. So they've simplified things further and made something that can be scaled down a lot more comfortably. And then they're applying the bright colors again across um, their different media brands as well. I think it really works. I love the simplification.
Yeah, it looks really cool. I was just sort of thinking from, like, a brand perspective. MTV, when it first started, was obviously music television. Like, it said what it was really clear. Um, and I think it's like a bit of a running joke now that you can't get music on MTV on the channel when you go and look at it. So I just wonder, like, I love the rebrand and everything. I wonder if at any point they'll consider like a full rebrand of, like, change of name or anything to align better with who they are now, because they're not music television.
But I guess it's an acronym that I mean, I'm just gonna scroll up and work out, have they ever referred to themselves in that way? And
Yeah, I mean, they stick
I'm
to
guessing no.
MTV, which is good. And, like, I feel like it would be such a difficult rebrand because it's such a well-known thing, but it's just
Oh, they're
interesting.
iconic. Like,
Yeah,
I don't know what you'd be able to change to still keep that level of, like, MTV is MTV.
mhm,
You just can't get past it, right? They're so big. They're just
yeah. At the same time, though, I
huge.
mean, from my perspective, when I think of MTV, I think of outdated, because I just think that they got stuck in that, like, music television space and just haven't been able to, like, adjust to the new sort of way things are done. And maybe this is sort of start of the push, or maybe I'm just not familiar enough with what they've been doing, because I don't think I watch or pay attention to any MTV content myself.
It's potentially also because we're in Australia,
Mm,
potentially because, shows like Catfish are quite big, and but then in Australia, I would argue that the streaming platforms have really got a stronghold, so we're not
mhm.
exposed to MTV as much. I think, MTV Awards and things like that happen in
I
the
forgot that
US.
existed.
Yeah, there's probably a lot that we don't get exposed to in Australia. So this is maybe
Mhm.
a case for the market being a bit different. But if you look through, and we'll have all these links in the description of whatever platform you're looking at this through. But if you look through, I think they've done a really nice application of color and shapes and patterns, and it's a good example. I think over the last few episodes we've talked about a few missteps and a few sort of mishits, but this MTV refresh to me is quite a solid move on their part, and they've sort of hit the nail on the head. I would say.
Yeah, I agree. I really like it.
Um, moving on from one refresh to more of a rebrand. They've have you used Avast antivirus ever, or do you know of
Uh,
them?
I'm gonna say yes. I'm not confident on it, but I'm sure at some point my dad would have installed that kind of thing on my laptops through the years.
Well, they've gone ahead and changed their logo mark, as well as the whole logo. Um, I wanted to show this as an example of how you can sort of change, but then I think condense down the principles of a logo to something even more, uh, I guess, stronger, more distilled. To me, this shift from a bit of a, I don't know what it was meant to be. To you, does it look a bit like a virus to you? The old logo A with the
Yeah,
orange.
maybe. I kind of just see a blob. It's not very creative, but yeah.
So, saying that, they've shifted to something even less creative, which is a circle. But what I like about
Mhm.
it is that it's a shape, but it is also somewhat abstract. And to me, as a whole sort of representation of an antivirus software, it looks a lot more serious. It looks a lot more professional and established. Where the old one looks a bit too playful. Like, I wouldn't necessarily want something so playful uh, installed on on my computer when I'm talking about my security and the security of potentially my loved ones and their information and financial information.
Mhm.
How does it sit with you though?
Yeah, I like it. I think that I see two shapes in this. That's the circle and a triangle. And those are two shapes I'd probably consider quite strong. I mean, triangles are apparently like the strongest kind of shape, really. And when it comes to a circle, this is probably a bit of a like English class stretch kind of thing here, but like I'm kind of thinking of like a turret or like a fort sort of thing. So like first line defense, strength in that sense. Again, that's probably an English stretch of like the apple was red, so it means this. But yeah, I like it. I think it's fresh. It's really clean. It does feel strong and kind of more trustworthy, I think, than the old one as well. And I like that they've gone to a darker black rather than the grey that they had previously, because again, I think it just adds that extra bit of strength to the name.
Yeah, certainly. And I think they've also been able to find a shape in terms of the A that is fairly unique. Like, I haven't really, it doesn't sort of make me look at it and go, "Oh, I've seen this before."
Hmm.
I've seen general, like, maybe 50% of the concept here, in that it's sort of like the same shape, sort of changing in size and scaling, but
Hmm.
they've still been able to find a somewhat unique execution of it. And ultimately, going on this, the thing that I go on about, harp on about the logo as an identifier rather than a descriptor. This really hits that nail on the head. Um, did I tell you about how I had this whole argument with someone in a Facebook group about logos as identifiers versus descriptors and
You might
that
have
whole
mentioned
thing?
it, but give me a refresher.
Well, the Avast example is probably the best one, and even MTV to an extent. But basically, I try and push this to people that logos should be identifiers, in that logos should be designed to be unique and ownable for you. And by that I mean, think of like the McDonald's M arch or the Nike tick. Um, Rather than trying to describe what you do. It's something that I think new or fresh graphic designers and logo designers do, in that, you know, they're doing a logo for a chicken shop, so they try and have a chicken in there, where you don't really see a chicken in the KFC logo, uh, and they think that that makes for a logo that is really representative of the company that they're designing the logo for. Whereas I would argue, and I'm interested to hear your thoughts on this, a logo instead should be something that makes you recognizable for yourself. So if you're Avast, someone should be able to see it and say, oh, that's Avast, versus someone looking at it and thinking to themselves, oh, that's an antivirus software.
Mm.
And it doesn't necessarily apply to every single industry. I think if you say are like um, a glass, like a windscreen shop, I think in that case, if you do auto glass, it doesn't hurt to have a more auto glass sort of representation in your logo, just because that's sort of a market that people sort of use once or twice in their lifetime, I
Mm.
would think.
You just want to be able to identify it quickly and know what it is, rather than like a
Bi-
long-term investment in a brand.
yeah, because people aren't going to, you would think. I mean, I've replaced a windscreen or windshield once in my years of owning a car so far. Have you ever replaced your windscreen in a
Never,
car?
no,
So you're not really trying to build a, you know, a good rapport with a auto glass provider, I would think,
no,
unless you're, you know, into just making friends in all the right places.
absolutely.
But what do you think about that sort of comment about logos as identifiers versus descriptors?
Yeah, I think it helps to, if you treat a logo as an identifier, it allows you to put a brand to the logo and apply your own sort of um, values and whatever else you want to sort of put to it and make it your own. And which I think Avast has done. Like they haven't tried to put like a security lock or a shield, or which is quite a
Yes,
common thing to do.
exactly.
So I think they've done well to stick to that. And I do also like that they've kept the orange to maintain what they built up from the previous logo. So it's similar enough, but it's fresh, it's new, without being a full complete rebrand.
So you're not throwing you're not throwing everything away. You're
No,
bringing some things across.
exactly. Yeah, I really like it.
Good, awesome. Well, jumping from a talk about logos to getting into more of the acquisitions that we mentioned at the start of the episode. The first one is Mailchimp being acquired for Intuit. Um, I don't think anyone would have guessed that Mailchimp would have been bought for $12 billion. Um,
Billion, jeez.
that's crazy. I've seen people say, you know, that they didn't realize that Mailchimp was so big, that they didn't realize that Mailchimp had that many customers. But then again, Intuit's known for acquiring a lot of companies. Have you heard of Intuit?
No, I've got to say, when it comes to acquisition stuff, I am very unfamiliar with most of these kind of companies. So I'm going to need you to walk me through a lot of them.
Well, Intuit is huge. The only reason I'm aware of Intuit is because they either developed, or I mean they definitely own QuickBooks, which is a
Mhm.
like a zero competitor. So it's not necessarily something that the average person comes across in terms of Intuit as a company. They're more sort of B2B focused. They Intuit also owns Mint.com, which is quite big in the US. I've just looked them up on Wikipedia, and there's about two screens worth of items of acquisitions as far as Intuit's concerned. So
Wow.
yeah, they've broken it down by decades. That's how significant. They've in the last 2 years they've acquired three companies. Last year they acquired a company called Credit Karma for $7.1 billion. So I've never heard of them, but these guys make a lot of money. They do revenue of around 6.7, 6.8 billion US dollars every year. So they're quite big. They have got over 10,000 employees. The
Wow.
reason I wanted to bring it up is because uh, Mailchimp to you, Kelsey, what does it mean? What do you remember Mailchimp like is in terms of what they do
Uh,
and what they offer?
the newsletters that show up in my inbox from various e-commerce stores that I signed up to for a 10% discount and forgot about, never bought from. That's pretty much Mailchimp for me. I mean, I've used it myself for lots of different newsletters, but yeah, that's sort of my knowledge of it.
Yeah, see, a lot of people don't realize that Mailchimp has become more of a marketing platform these days rather than just a newsletter service. So there's automations, I think you can even build your own websites using Mailchimp. Definitely you can
Mm-hmm.
do landing pages. So um I think Mailchimp's been loved. I mean, I used to love we still got clients who use Mailchimp. Uh, but I think this news is interesting in that Intuit spent $12 billion on acquiring Mailchimp. They're going to want to make some of that money back as soon as
Yeah,
possible. And Mailchimp's over the years really tightened what they used to do as sort of free service. They've tightened it further and further. And this is more of a heads up that if you're not already paying for Mailchimp, there might be an increased chance of you needing to pay for Mailchimp. Now, I can't really suggest an alternative because Mailchimp is really quite good. We've got clients who use Mailchimp to send 30,000 emails a day. Extremely reliable. So there's not other options necessarily, but if you're concerned about it, something to keep an eye out for because um, you might need to start paying for features that used to be free.
mm, that's unfortunate. Kind of hope it
It-
goes the other way. Maybe they'll allow more free features from a larger company that owns them now. Being
Potentially,
able to
maybe
spread
they
resources across the different companies.
and to I guess maybe get more customers signed up. Um,
Yeah,
something I guess to look out for. I mean, Canva's sort of done that. Canva's worth 4 times what Mailchimp's worth, but I
yeah,
would argue that Mailchimp's just as well known as Canva.
yeah.
Um,
And I think both companies, they've done a really good job of offering enough free tier services that you get hooked and you go, this is great, this is worth the investment, and convince them that way rather than sort of going money first. So I kind of hope that they'll continue with that kind of model and be able to, yeah, justify why people should pay for it in that sense.
yeah, just to wait and see. This isn't the first talk of acquisitions. This episode, we've got another couple things to talk about. So um, before we jump into those, let's talk about what we did a few days ago this week at Future Theory um, in migrating from futuretheory.com.au to futuretheory.co. Now, I wanted to bring this up because when you're deciding on a domain name, I think a lot of people struggle to find short domain names for the names that they come up with. Have you ever tried to register a domain name, Kelsey? And how was that experience for you in terms of finding an available domain name?
I haven't done it for myself, but we've sort of done it for a few clients that have, we thought were unique names, I guess, but obviously in the world of the internet, there's domains taken everywhere. It was quite challenging because then you start having to put like hyphens or I don't even know what else, just like spelling it differently, adding other words, or just making it really long and inconvenient. Haven't loved that side of it.
Yeah, so for us, we've been trying to acquire featuretheory.com for a long, long time, and we're just not hearing back from the current company that has it and doesn't really use it. But what we wanted to do was to change our .com.au is fantastic. We will continue to serve our local Australian customers and clients, but we also wanted to look at how we can help more people and reach more people with the information that we have on the website. We get a lot of visits every day, every month onto the website, and we've been looking at sort of getting information on the website that helps as many people as possible, while also continuing to help our Australian customers. So that's why we've shifted from .com.au to .co. It's still too early to know whether that's going to have a negative effect on our search engine optimization. We've done everything that we can when we shift from a domain. For anyone who's sort of looking into it, it's basically you want to do 301 redirects, which sounds a bit more technical than the average person would want to deal with, but it is quite important to maintain the sort of nice SEO positioning and the nice uh, image that you've built up for yourselves in Google's eyes. So we've shifted to a .co. We're going to release a lot more information in the coming weeks, in the coming months. But I wanted to mention it more as a, we've shifted, and so keep that in mind now, sort of, and also I guess mention it for anyone who's looking to shift your domain name. There is a good and correct way to do it, and there are definitely wrong ways to do it and ways to mess it up. So, if you're looking for help, reach out to us or join the Future Tribe Facebook group, which is going to be linked below, and we'd love to help you in there as well. Um, did you have anything else to add to that, Kelsey?
No, I think you've got it all. I mean, definitely come join the Future Tribe group. You can ask any questions you've got there. It's sort of our community community source information, and for us to be able to talk with people directly and sort of offer that advice in a more free sort of setting.
Definitely, definitely. So on to the next acquisition news. When you read it out, I could tell that you weren't completely aware of Monster
Got no
Insights and
idea.
Easy Digital Downloads, but these guys are huge in the WordPress plugin, WordPress space. Monster Insights, best known for their Google plugin that allows you to integrate Google Analytics onto your website and monitor Google Analytics on your WordPress site directly within the dashboard. And Easy Digital Downloads is a very popular, as the name suggests, digital downloads plugin. But the companies behind them are called Awesome Motive and Sandhills Development. These guys are actually huge in the WordPress space. So Awesome Motive has Opt-in Monster, WP Forms, Monster Insights, and other WordPress plugins that if you're in the WordPress world, you'd be very, very aware of. And then Sandhills Development includes Easy Digital Downloads, Affiliate WP, WP Simple Pay. There are a lot of plugins again there. So this is more of the consolidation that we've been talking about in the podcast space and the WordPress space. I personally think it's a bit of a pity because a lot of these companies build up a lot of goodwill and a lot of that sort of small business customer service and community around them, and then they get acquired by a bigger company. Do you do you have a lot of experience, Kelsey, sort of dealing with smaller companies that are fantastic and then they might get acquired and things start to fall off a little bit?
Um, I've got to say, nothing really comes to mind. Trying to think of like what kind of companies I've interacted with lately, but nothing's really coming to mind.
Well, that's a good example, I guess, of the fact that maybe it won't be a huge thing for you. Maybe you won't even realize. Like, ideally, in an ideal world, when a company gets acquired by another, the customers won't even notice. So potentially, maybe this is to say that I'm just being um, a bit more pedantic about something that won't affect everyone else. But then looking at it from my perspective, which is more of a development WordPress management point of view, we've got clients using plugins from both sides of the camp. It'll be interesting to see what they do with it. And there's another acquisition that we also mentioned, which is LearnDash being acquired, and LearnDash is a very popular WordPress LMS or learning management system, and they've been acquired by Stellar WP, who's actually owned by Liquid Web, which is again a big company, and again more consolidation. So the guys behind or the team behind Stellar WP owns iThemes, the Events Calendar, Restrict Content Pro. All these used to be, or majority of them used to be separate products that are now being acquired and acquired and acquired. And personally, from my side of the debate, I don't like it. I love being able to talk to the developer or a small team of 10 people. Whereas now, we're just becoming one of the numbers.
Mm.
But then again, doesn't sound like you're affected too much by this sort of thing, or you
Yeah.
you notice.
I think I probably come from the opposite direction. I can understand your concern with that happening, but I kind of feel like when it comes to acquisitions, yes, it can sort of fall off that small business kind of style of doing things. But I think it can also open up that company to be able to do more and be able to help more people, or make their services more streamlined, have better customer service things. If you've just got one developer who's talking to the customers, there's only so many people they can talk to, and that's great when you're at the early stages of that business. But when it gets to a point where you've got thousands and thousands of customers, that one developer can't talk to all of them, and you need to bring in that sort of customer service team, which I think these acquisitions allow to happen in a proven way, with people that sort of know what they're doing. It's not just trial and error again and again for all these different small businesses. So I think it just opens up a lot more capability with these acquisitions and probably streamlines better.
What do you think though it does in a world where like WordPress was developed as well, it's still open source, it's built by the community, and we're getting bigger and bigger, companies having roles to play within an open source community. Again, this is coming from like you're looking at it more from the consumer side, than I would be looking at it. So I'm
Mhm.
interested to hear your thoughts on that side. Like we've got this very community focused product and platform that is becoming increasingly corporatized.
Mm. So I'm not as familiar myself with open source platforms from the perspective of somebody who would, I guess, be contributing or like really in that community. So it's sort of hard to comment on how that impacts it, because again, I am looking from that corporate perspective where I see the positives of it being corporatized. But I can understand that the people who are much more invested in open source sort of stuff and being really involved in that community would not be happy about it, because I guess they would lose, or they'd be competing with bigger people for one, or bigger companies, bigger groups. Um, and I guess it does lose that sort of community built feel when you've got all of a sudden this investment from all these big companies. So I can understand that.
Well, you've spoken to the benefits of having more resources, and I think that's very true. So maybe my concern also is coming from the angle of like corporations now are accruing a lot of power in a world where the open source community, the whole point of open source is that there is power sort of democratized across multiple individuals, and everything sort of a team effort. And going more corporate obviously takes away from that, but we'll see what happens. WordPress is getting bigger and bigger every year, and despite all these other web website building solutions like Wix, Squarespace, etc., etc. WordPress continues to be really, really strong and going from strength to strength. So maybe WordPress is just going to become more corporatized as we go, and that doesn't necessarily mean that the open source community gets smaller. Hopefully, and it just means that on top of the open source side of things, there's corporations sort of beating the same drum and pushing things forward as well, which
Mm.
sounds like that's a good thing, I think.
Yeah, I mean, it kind of feels like it's just capitalism in a early form, isn't it? Because you start off with open source sort of stuff where you've got a couple of contributors, and then they become more popular, and all of a sudden they have to bring on another person to help them out with the development. All of a sudden, you've got all these mini corporations and things which get taken over. It's just, and it builds. So it just, to me, it just seems like classic capitalism situation, and you can't
Yeah,
really do too much about it when that's the whole structure of, I guess, how open source will end up being eventually.
yeah, yeah. Maybe maybe that's just what it is, and I've just gotta get on board.
It's kind of sad, but I mean, that just seems like, yeah, how capitalism starts off.
Well, ultimately, anyway, if these products continue to serve their customers, and don't go back and sort of hurt or damage previous customers, I think then it's a good outcome. So, um, yeah, I think we'll just wait and see. It's good to know, good to be aware of. We'll wait and see. And then the last one is Input, which is a new podcast slash video cast by the team behind Gravity Forms, a very, very popular WordPress plugin again. So a lot of WordPress news this week. But these guys, they've announced that they're releasing, a video and a podcast called Input that tells the stories of people who are doing something creative, sharing the ins and outs of how their industries work, and providing insight for WordPress's growing community of problem solvers. So I wanted to bring this up because um, they're sort of doing something similar to what we're trying to do, and we're doing, but it's a team behind Gravity Forms, really popular plugin. Again, be a team that keeps on growing, and a product that is very popular. So I wanted to get the word out there on their behalf on this episode.
Nice. I'll have to go have a listen after this.
Yeah, they've just also mentioned that there's going to be a new Gravity Forms website coming soon as well. And again, the team behind Rocket Genius, who are the guys who build Gravity Forms, is fantastic. So go check it out. We'll include all the links to everything that we talked about in this episode in the description. Was there anything else we needed to mention before we call it?
I think that's everything. All the
That
things on the
is
bill.
everything. Awesome. Well, just before we roll the outro, thanks for listening to this episode. We'll be back with you with more news next week, everything to do with design, marketing, WordPress development. So catch you then.
See you later.